April 29th, 2020. And we're holding this conference via teleconference. As chairman of the Budget Review Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note, there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing WebEx through the city's IT department for this electronic meeting. All members of the Budget Review Committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen to this meeting through dialing the following number: 1-978-990-5298 and using the password 273974. The public may also view this meeting on Comcast Channel 16. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for assessing this meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting through public postings. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website at www.nashuanh.gov and publicly noticed at City Hall. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. And D, during the meeting, if the public is unable to access this meeting, in the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Also ensure that you can hear us and that you are attending remotely. Alderman O'Brien, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderwoman at-Large, Shoshanna Kelly.
I am here. I am alone. And I can hear everyone.
Alderman at-Large, Michael O'Brien. I am present. I can hear everyone and I am alone. Alderman at-Large, Laurie Wilshire.
I'm here. I am home alone and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Ernest Jetty.
I'm here. I'm alone. I'm attending remotely because of the stay-at-home order, and I can hear you fine.
Alderman Jan Schmidt.
I can hear you all. I am the only human in the room, and it's because of the governor's guidelines that we're doing this crazy thing.
Alderman at-Large, Ben Clemons.
I am here. I'm participating via telephone, and it's due to the governor's executive order, and I can hear everyone.
Chairman, Richard A. Dowd.
Yes, I can hear everyone. I'm alone and I am practicing social distancing in accordance with the governor's orders. All right.
Also in attendance, Mr. Chairman, are Alderman Clee, Alderman Harriet Gathright, and Alderman Lopez. Is there any other alderman present that I did not call? Okay. Also in attendance, Mr. Chairman, is Police Chief Michael Carignan, Deputy Police Chief Jim Testaverde, Karen Smith from the Police Department. And is that, Mr. O'Rourke, what's your title at MPD, please?
Deputy Chief, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Deputy Chief O'Rourke is also present.
Okay. Is there someone on from the Community Development Group? I see the CD. Anyway, all right. So, communications,
Yes, from Lori Adelano, Region Carignan 141 Burke Street, and the 2021 budget.
if there are no objections, I'll waive the reading and put this on file. All right, I'd also like to make a motion to suspend the rules to accept the communication dated 29 April 2029 from Ms. Lori Orlando. There's no objections, we'll suspend the rules to take that correspondence regarding questions and communications for the Board of Aldermen meeting last evening and place it on file. Unfinished business,
There is none.
new business resolutions,
None.
new business ordinances.
There is none.
Okay, R 2016 is not being taken from the table. It's still pending. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make the motion to remove from the table Resolution R-20-23 relative to the adoption of fiscal year 2021 proposed budget for the City of Nashua General Enterprise and Special Revenue Funds. A public hearing is scheduled for May 20th, 2020, 7 p.m. at Nashua High School North Auditorium.
Yes, I just always want to mention that I believe that that's probably not going to happen in that location. It will be somehow a remote electronic communication. So the motion on the floor is to remove 2023 from the table. Will you please call the roll? Alderman O'Brien, would you call the roll for that motion? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I was on mute. Alderman Clemons,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Wiltshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you. And Alderman Lou joined us as well. Okay, tonight we're going to be talking Department number 150, Police. The appropriations are on page 127. And leading the discussion will be the Chief, Mike Carignan. Chief, if you want to start out giving an overview.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present in this kind of unique fashion. I appreciate it. I know it's crazy sideways for all of us. In presenting this year's budget or putting it together, as you know, we've had a hard push. We've spoken several times before about our need for the past several years to try to get up to full staff, to full alderman authorized budgeted staff. We've made we were at a point where we were 19 officers down, and it was getting critical to the point where, as you know, it takes us a good 6 to 11 months to get somebody up and running between the testing, the background, the academy, the field training period to get them back on the street. So it's critical for us to keep a constant supply of officers trained and running. Our goal this year, as we mentioned several times, was to get up to full staff. I fully believe we're going to do that. We have recently put on 15 officers between certified and new officers. They'll be at different stages coming through the academy and through training to get onto the street. I'm sorry, correction, 13 officers. So when we did this budget, we obviously, as you know, in the past, we've talked many times, and can everybody hear me okay? We've
Yes.
talked in the past many times about being forced to budget through attrition. What that means is we've been forced from a couple of administrations ago to use the people that leave, use their budget to fund the overtime to cover the vacancies. And it's not a real responsible way for us to have to operate because we can never get ourselves up to full staff. So as you can see in the budget that we're presenting today, we level funded almost everything as we have for the past couple of years. A majority of the increases were due to the proposed contract increases that had already been ratified by the boards. And in addition to that, we are asking or trying to get back in the reduction, which was the roughly $200,000 that was cut from our the above and beyond the 2.25 that the mayor gave us. So we are asking to get that put back in so that we are able to get up to full staff and we are able to provide services on the street.
Okay. There's a couple things about the budget. First of all, there was a mistake in the budget book relative to part-time and full-time. Mrs. Smith, do you want to explain that and how that ended up being? It has to do with the attorney.
Yes, am I on?
Yes, you're on.
Yes, there was just a miscommunication. Right now, we're funded properly. It's just a question of which account they want to put it in. So we're going to still have discussions on that. The attorney is unique in that she is a 35-hour. So the FTE can be counted as part-time. It can be counted as full-time. We just need to make a decision on that. The UFPO contract just settled and the information that's in there needs to be defined. If the decision is to keep that as part-time, that's where the funding has been put right now. So if you look at the dollar amount, it has been moved from last year. That's the dollar amount. Nothing has been increased. The value is the same. It's just been moved from the full-time account down to the part-time account. So wherever it decides to lie in the end, there has been no increase in value.
Okay, I just pointed that out because people could have a question of having one person with that salary. I want to make sure they know it's an attorney and that is used to represent the police department. Okay, are you ready to address questions, Chief?
I am, yes, sir.
All right. Would anyone like to address a question on the police budget?
Yes, Chairman Dowd.
That would be Alderman Clemons. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. So I'll address my questions to the chief. I had sent out a couple of questions, and I appreciate you getting back to me on them. My first question was, are there any new positions in your budget that did not exist last year? And you stated that there was not. However, there was an IT manager that we needed to, or in your opinion, needed to put the funding back in for, and that was for $20,495. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely. As it currently stands, you heard Monday night, you heard from Bill Mansfield and his division. He maintains the radio systems for the entire city. A major part of that radio component is the police department and the emergency management radio systems. They also include the fire department. Bill Mansfield is based out of our building. The towers are out of our building. In the event of an emergency, that our building is what facilitates citywide communications. The way Bill Mansfield explained it to me was radio technology used to be a lot radio, a little bit IT. It has since become a lot IT, a little bit radio. Because of that, Bill Mansfield has one other full-time employee he works with. If something were to happen to Bill, there may not be anybody that understands how to properly keep that radio system functioning and troubleshoot any emergencies without having to go to Motorola and pay an extreme large amount of money to have two advisors come in and do the correction problems. So we have a philosophy at the PD where we're always training and preparing for what I call the hit by a bus theory. So if something were to happen to somebody, we are able to have somebody step in and take over with minimal impact on the city. Pete Simfo is our IT manager, and he expressed a desire to learn more about the radio system, the IT portion of the radio system. So he's able to troubleshoot and help us maintain that system, A, in the event to take some of the workload off Bill Mansfield, and B, to be able to run it in the event that something happened to Bill or it was an emergency situation. It made sense to me. And so what we did is Bill agreed to absorb 20% of Pete Simfo's salary in his budget. So we removed it from ours. So what we're asking is that for us to train Pete, we just figured that made sense. What I'm asking is if that's not something that you are interested in doing, I would ask that his 20% be restored back into our budget.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that explanation. Thank you. And I agree with you. I think that's an important role for sure. My second question, though, was how many open positions did you intend to have by July 1st? What are they, and could you go a year without them? And without putting words in your mouth, you basically said that you can't go without filling any of the positions. My question is how many realistically by July 1st, how many officers or how many positions will you have where you don't have a candidate for those positions, and no one has been, extended an offer? Is my first question.
Okay, so we currently, like I said, we just swore in 15 officers, either certified or brand new, and we've given conditional offers to three additionals, and we have at least 4 certified officers who have gone through the second interview process with us before they go to the conditional offer. And basically what that means is you initially have a 1-on-1 interview, or I'm sorry, a 3-on-1 interview, then you meet for a secondary interview. We do minimal background. You meet with the deputy. If all things are lining up, we give a conditional offer. That allows us to dig deeper into the background, to do a polygraph, drug test, psych test, physical fitness test, a complete background. So all those things take a little bit of time. We have names and bodies in the pipeline for that. Now, we're expecting, prior to COVID, we had 2 officers that were scheduled to leave, one to go to the DEA, one to go to a private security firm down in Massachusetts. So we're expecting when this stops for them to leave. And because of the time frame that it takes to identify, interview, background test, and do all that, and then get them into the academy, it's really, you can't look at it like we're going to hire somebody next week. We're hiring them for a year. These 15 officers that we just hired, 8 of them will not be ready for until they won't leave for the academy. So they're not going to be ready to us on the street as police officers until mid next year. So we're going to go through almost the whole next fiscal year without them being any good to us. So we have to keep that flow going, because between now and then, you never know how many more officers are going to leave. If that answers your question.
Alderman,
It does.
Alderman Clemons?
Yeah.
Just one second. We've been joined by Commissioner Tollner, and okay, you can continue on with your question.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. So my question is, though, and I don't disagree with the fact that, having that many I think at the beginning of the year, you said we had like 19 vacancies, and I understand that's completely unacceptable. And I also understand the fact that it takes a long time to get these officers up to speed, and be on the street and be ready to serve. So I understand that point. But my greater point is that, we're facing tough times, as you know, and we are looking to try to find cost savings without having to lay anyone off, as much as possible in every single department. And in some departments that can happen. In some, we might not be able to. So, yeah, Chief, I think you know me, at least I would hope so, that I'm always advocating for more when the city can do it. And I advocated for you last year to try to get more money into the police department, and I actually voted against the budget because it didn't have that. But we are facing, Nashua right now has 12% unemployment, and that's expected to go up to about 20% if things stay the way that they are. So what I'm just asking is, do you think that for the next year, until the economy hopefully gets better, that you might be able to make do if we took away some of those positions that you haven't already made an offer to people? Because we're all in this together, and we have to get the tax rate down. The thing is, the mayor's budget as it is going to be over 4% increase. And to me, that's too much to ask for our city residents when we're facing that much unemployment. If it had been January, absolutely. The economy was rolling along. People were fine. Our unemployment rate was below 3%. Absolutely. But overnight, these things change. And I'm just wondering, Chief, if it's something that, you might be able to go back and look in the budget and see if there's any place that we can cut or do without, just at least for the next year.
So, Alderman, I appreciate your comments, and I absolutely appreciate your support as well as the board's support. I will caution you this: I will manage my budget with whatever figure you give me. We'll figure out how to manage it based on what we get. I'm here to tell you what we need, and I'll caution you on holding off on hiring the police officers, and I'll tell you why. Number one, as you know, getting good candidates is very, very difficult in this day and age. Becoming a police officer is not as desirable as it once was. We went from 500, 600 applicants at any given test down to sometimes 20 or 30. It's difficult to get them. If we don't hire these officers, Manchester State Police, some of the smaller agencies, they're going to scoop them up. So we could be losing good candidates, number one. Number two, if you ask me to hold off until next year, we could lose 3, 4, 5 more officers over the course of this year. We just don't know who's going to retire. And then we have to wait till this time next year to say, okay, are they going to give us money in the budget to be able to hire these officers again in the future? And then once we get that answer, that's when we have to start posting tests and asking people to come take the test and start that process. So you're asking me if I can hold off on officers. A, I can't answer you who's going to leave. And B, you're asking me to hold off not 1 year, but 2.5 years, because those officers are not going to be, if I hold off, available to me for that period of time.
So may I just quickly respond? So
Yeah.
Just so we're on the same page, what I would be asking was, let's say, just to use a number that you had used in the past. At the beginning of this year, you said, 19, you had 19 vacancies. So let's assume that by August, July 1st, you only have 3, for example, or you anticipate that, you would only have 3. My request is, could you take the salaries of those 3 out of this budget? Now, remembering that if somebody else retires, they're already in the budget. So you would be able to replace their salary, and in all likelihood, it might even be less with that other person who's already budgeted salary. So I'm just talking about pure vacancies. I'm not talking about not being able to replace somebody that's already there. I'm just talking about vacancies that in other words, the seats aren't filled, if that makes sense.
Yeah, again, like I said, we'll have to make do with whatever you give us. Like I said, we're at a point now where we're 19 down. Well, we'll be the 2 down or 3 down, losing 2 more. And I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to explain that it just takes so long to get good candidates, get them up and running, and get them trained and certified that it's a 2-year problem for me if you're asking me to do that. But
Just,
again, I'll make do with whatever you ask.
just for historical,
Thank you.
just for historical information, a few years ago, I don't remember exactly how many years ago, but when McCarthy was the president of the board, and the police department was expending a lot of overtime to cover positions because they didn't have enough staff, enough people, officers. We upped the allowance of officers to the police department so they could have enough full-time people to cut down on that overtime.
Yeah.
In at least the last year and maybe the last 2 years, Chief, you'll have to remind me, because of the mayor's cut, especially last year, they were not able to hire to the level that we had authorized them because they didn't have the money. And they had to make do with that cut by spending monies from other areas and again, managing by attrition. I have some ideas when we get further into deliberations on how to, before that, Chief, if you don't get the 200K recovered, you wouldn't be able to hire a full staff anyway. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I have some ideas when we get into deliberations about how to get the 200K put back in their budget without impacting the budget at all. And I don't want to explain it now, but I have been talking with John Griffin and the mayor about it, and there's possibilities of things that we can do. Also, other things across the board about getting the budget down significantly from where it is right now without severely impacting any of the divisions. So we'll talk about that later, but right now I see Alderman O'Brien with his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, along the same lines, maybe to see what Alderman Clemons is really getting to, but do you see any benefit? I would hate to have your department go through the whole year not fully staffed. But I understand you have to get the qualified candidate a long lead time before we pick the right candidate that we're picking and choose to serve the citizens of Nashua. Could that work for our advantage with a partial target date of half a year and have a commitment to hire and have these people sign an agreement that as of December or January, that they can come on and start the academy at that particular time? And would that reflect into savings into the city on this matter? Is half a year better than losing the position for a full year is basically what we're asking.
But by the way, before you answer, Chief, I meant to have you just explain what a certified officer is, because now that they're hiring certified officers, they don't have that long delayed time. So, Chief, you want to just fill in there?
Sure. Alderman O'Brien, I appreciate the question, and I'll answer that in 1 second. The certified officer, there are 2 levels. There's a certified and what we call a certified 2. A certified police officer comes to us with less than 2 years experience, but is academy trained and has been working elsewhere. A certified 2 as a police officer comes to us certified through the police standards and training and has more than 2 years experience, which is the equivalent of our patrolman. So we're bringing them in at a level that they've got some experience, they've got their academy trained. We have to put them through a 10-week training period, and then they're able to go right back on the street. And that's critical because 10 weeks is a lot different than 26 weeks or 32 weeks based on the training. So that's kind of the difference. And regarding your question for the half a year, I will say this again, I'll manage my budget with whatever you grant me. However, You ask somebody to wait 6 months, they're probably going to go look elsewhere because they
Right.
can get hired by state police tomorrow. They can get hired by Manchester tomorrow. There's just, you folks know there's going to be a lot of jobs out there looking to come back to, especially in the public service sector, because there's stability there. And I'd hate to lose great candidates because we're going to say, hey, can you just hold on? And I can't look at anybody in the eye and say, just hold on for 6 months if I don't know for sure that they're going to have that pot guaranteed or that job guaranteed.
Thank you, Chief, for your answer. I think that's fair, and I happen to agree with you. Now, I think it will be, what this pandemic has left into public service jobs will come up on the rise again as dependability careers. Thank you.
Karen, did you want to add something? You're on mute.
I do. Commission authorized at 187, and we haven't filled that. It's been like that for some time. And I would not recommend this course of action at all. We need to continue with the authorized strength and budgeted at the current strength. Any kind of reduction would just not be beneficial. I understand what we're going through right now, but the amount of overtime that we're paying, that's just the wrong direction. We're finally chugging away, and we're finally getting to that point where we're gonna tip over to the full complement, and to finally get to a true budgeting of where we're supposed to be, so that we can be down maybe 1, 2, 3, instead of, if we tip over again and do what we did back with, I think it might have been under Chief Heffron, when he was asked the same type of question with the same budget issues that I've been hearing for, I don't know how many years, 10 years that I've been doing budgets. I understand and I sympathize that we have the continued concerns, but it's more important at this time to get the proper people out on the streets to be able to have the manpower that they need to refigure this budget so that we have the positions instead of the overtime paying for the manpower that need to be out there. And that's my opinion. Thank
And
you.
I'd also just like to add, if I might, if I can, Alderman Dowd.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. We have Deputy Testaverde had put a plan together in place involving sergeants and reallocating and increasing a sergeant by one position to reduce overtime. We feel that that's going to have a huge impact at some point, but because we've been down so many officers, we haven't been able to realize those savings in overtime. So we need a period of time where we're not down so many bodies or going through a pandemic where we can evaluate that. But we have different strategies to save money, but they require us to have a full complement of officers.
Commissioner Tolna, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to what Karen said. So I think it's been our objective. I've been a commissioner for about 4.5 years now. We've never been close, full complement. And as a result of that, what you're going to end up doing is paying a boatload of overtime. So exactly how she had laid it out is correct. So, I mean, you're going to spend more on overtime, but the other issue that we haven't talked about is a lot of times we will actually force these officers to come in on overtime. Okay, and that's not good for the morale and the health of the officers as well, because they do their vacation and their overtime, and probably just more importantly, their regular time off. And there have been numerous times over the last 2 or 3 years where they had time off. And for a number of reasons, we've had to call them in. Now, they get the overtime, but a lot of times, if you gave them the choice of the overtime or enjoying that time off that they thought they would need, I think they would take the time off. So the last thing I'll say is it would be a very good problem to have if, as the police department, we met our goals and objectives in hitting that full complement number. A lot of things happen when we go to interview officers and try and bring them in. Some of it's out of our control. So even if it's our objective to hit that full complement number, I think everybody from the police department would say, we'd be surprised if we actually could hit that full complement number and actually keep it. Because it seems like every time we bring in a new officer, a few other officers go out the back door for a number of valid reasons.
Thank you. Deputy Testaverde, do you want to add something?
Yes, thank you very much. Good to see you all again. I don't mean to beat a dead horse. When Alderman Clemons was presenting that, I was nodding my head along saying that that does seem reasonable. And as I was thinking it through, I just want to bring home another point that the commissioner was just kind of talking about. It was sometime last summer when I remember sitting in front of this board for one of the contracts saying we're down 20 officers, were earmarked to be down 22. And we went into this big panic and crisis, and we totally changed the way we attacked recruiting. And now within 6 months, without lowering our standards, we just swore in 15 officers. Out of the 15, only one is on their own, and that's a certified officer that was a Nashua police officer, left us for another job, but kept his certification and came back. So that's kind of an anomaly we're not used to seeing. We have 2 officers right now earmarked to leave. They should have been off the books and left, but the pandemic stopped. One is to go to federal security out of Boston, and the other is to go with the DEA. These, as the commissioner just said, when people leave, I can't remember the last person that said I'm leaving in 6 months. They're dropping their notices very quickly because they know if they're applying with other agencies, it's like any other job. You don't want to go up to your boss and say, I'm thinking of applying with another agency. Training and certain things, we don't hold a grudge, but certain things that you're probably earmarked for, we're going to hold off on that and start to look at some other candidates for those positions. So people walk up to us and tell us at the last moment, usually when their backgrounds are being conducted, if we did what Alderman Clemons is suggesting, and again, I say at first I was nodding my head along, we could get to a position in 6 months from now where I'm coming to you saying we're down 12 now. All of a sudden it can happen. I couldn't believe we were down 20 officers until we actually did a hand count. And now we have a board. So we never have to count again. We have a tote board going every day.
Thank you. Alderwoman Kelly, did you have a question? And Alderman Lee.
Thank you, Alderman Dowd. If I could change the subject slightly, but still on the same range. So at the beginning, the chief said that he would like the 200,000 return to the budget. So my question is, if that is unable to happen, what, in layman's terms, I guess is what I'm asking, what does that look like from a reduction of service standpoint?
Chief?
So that's a great question. Couple of different things that would happen. Number one, we wouldn't be able to fill the vacancies for the officers, so the overtime would go back up. So not only are we not having the positions, but we're costing more money because we have to backfill those spots that are empty. Now, I want to reiterate that we say overtime, we talk like overtime like it's a bonus money for everybody, but it's not. As we've made very clear and we've demonstrated to you, we spend a lot of time and money training our officers. So officers have certain, and if you notice in the books, there's a list of some of the required trainings that we have to put every single one of our officers through and what that means in man hours and cost. But you also have to remember that we have to fill those positions on the street when those people are in that training. So that's overtime. It's not saying it's just bonus money. It's mandatory fill those positions. So we lose a lot there. We would then have to kind of tighten our belts. As you know, this year's budget, we're at 95% payroll is where we're at. We would have to start cutting positions like a Sector 16. Sector 16 is a police officer that sits in the station on the busiest shift, second shift, and sometimes first shift if available manpower is there. All the people that walk in the lobby, and there's a ton of people that just pull up and come in and ask for a police officer. If Sector 16 is there, they're able to handle that report. They're able to help that person with whatever issue they're having. And the sector car, so say up on, if you live on, East Hall Street, the sector car can stay out in East Hall Street to help people out there, people in need, and respond to immediate calls, while the Sector 16 is here handling calls. If we don't have a Sector 16, the officer from East Hall Street has to drive all the way in, meet that person, deal with them, leaving the downtown area empty, take the report, go all the way back out to the area that they live. So it's very inefficient, and it takes away manpower on the street on quite a large regular basis. And at any point in time, you could have 3, 4, 5 people in the lobby with different sector cars pulled in, leaving the streets pretty empty. Other positions that we would have to give up services on would be, Sector 1, which is our downtown routes. They're the officers that patrol up and down Main Street When the businesses are open, they're on the bicycles, they're walking up and down Main Street, making contact with the business owners, kind of moving people along that really just kind of hanging out, bothering some of the patrons. And so those officers would be forced to come off the street. We would have to, look seriously at our elderly affairs officers, at our community policing programs, and bring them all in. And I think you all know me well enough that a big part of my philosophy in running the National Police Department is to engage in a lot of these groups, the nonprofit groups. We're all a part of that as far as my administration and my staff. And I think that's a huge part of how we police successfully. And some of those things would have to be pulled back so we could make the coverage commitments on the street.
All set.
Please,
There be a
Alderman.
follow-up?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you for that explanation. That was really thorough. So my second question is just wondering what things are looking like right now where people are under the stay-at-home order. Are you same busy, more busy, less busy? How's it looking out there for you guys?
So for us, I guess my answer is we're less busy, and that we're less busy. But the simple fact is I've told my officers to be less busy. Basically, we're for the past 2 months since this began, our officers have not been proactively responding to calls like we do. And that's going to be a huge loss for the city, because we don't just sit in our car and do nothing all day and wait for a call, go answer it, come back and sit and drink coffee. We're very active. We'll get out of our cars. We'll go engage people. We'll go to a park. We'll talk to kids. We'll at a bunch of different levels. So the proactive policing has stopped because we don't want that contact. The only type of proactive stuff we're doing now is if we see large groups or we see gatherings, we'll go try to educate them and move them along. But that has a huge impact long term on us, because we're not out there constantly in contact with people. Just talking to people we know are troublemakers, having them see us, having them talk to us. What are you up to now? Where you living now? Those types of things are critical. So we're being very reactive now as opposed to proactive. We've changed how we handle medical calls a lot. We're working very well with the fire department. And as you know, I've made clear we have a contingent of officers that are in reserve, for the mere fact that, when this thing started to unfold, New York City was impacted dramatically. I needed to ensure that we had a contingent of officers ready to be on the street. We've pulled several back. At one point, we had 7 officers that were under quarantine. We had pulled a contingency in to manage that, then sent them back when they were cleared to come back to duty. So we're managing now. Everything seems to be quiet, crime stats wise, over this period. Twice a week, we get the numbers on probably 20 different types of calls, just to kind of see. And we look at it a bunch of different ways. This week compared to this week last year, the COVID period, which we consider from March 6th to the current date, this year and then last year and then year to date. As of through the COVID period, a majority of crime stats are down for us. But again, a lot of that is proactive policing not being present. DCYF letters are down 68% right now. We're worried that those calls are just not coming in. The teachers don't have contacts with the kids. PAL doesn't have contact. The Boys and Girls Club, they're not all sending these kids to report these. All it doesn't mean all those changed. This COVID thing didn't dramatically, hey, crime's all gone. This has been the best thing in the world because it killed crime. So we're anticipating that when the stay-at-home orders are lifted, and that's going to come within 3-4 weeks, we're going to see those increases again. People are going to come out. They're going to start drinking. They're going to start getting in fights. They're going to start doing all the things that happen, and they're going to do it with a lot of energy having been built up, a lot of frustration, and a lot of stress. So the reports are down now. Our numbers are down. Our activity is down, mostly by design, but don't think that's realistic to look at that long term.
All set, Alderwoman Kelly? Okay, before I go to Alderman Clee, and then I'll go to Alderman Schmidt and then Alderman O'Brien. We have to remember that come July 1st, COVID-19 is not gone away. And there are 2 things. One, police officers and the firemen and the EMTs are out there interfacing with the public with the threat of COVID-19 and catching COVID-19. As I'm sure Deputy O'Rourke will tell you that they could end up, you could have officers end up on quarantine. You could have officers get ill. And the bigger thing is when they're out there in that environment, to me, it's almost like when they're in a shooting environment, there's a lot of stress and that stress builds up. And if you have officers that have to be killing all this overtime because they're short of officers, that does not bode well for their mental health. So we have to all consider that as we go through this. So Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Chairman Dowd, and thank you, Chief, for all the answers that you've been giving and so on. Hopefully my question is just kind of quick. When I'm looking at your overtime, I don't really see any difference between the original budget of 2020 and what you're requesting this year. If you were to get your full complement and so on, do you believe that there would be any change in your overtime? Do you think it would be lessened? I know you've had to use overtime to fill those vacancies, but
Yeah, I definitely think that our overtime numbers would be lowered considerably. I think we were at $2.3 million last year. Don't quote me on those numbers, but roughly. And Karen, feel free to chime in if I'm off on the numbers. But spending 2.3 roughly last year, and last year was a high year because we were down so many officers, we had to backfill. Realistically, we would like to be able to get that number down to around 1.2, which is where we should be at. And Karen, again, please jump in if I'm misspeaking on this. But that's what we would anticipate being at full complement, get us those numbers down to.
Karen?
Yes, I'll just jump in to make sure that we're understanding our crazy accounting. Looking at the line for overtime, you can't look at the budget. You have to look at both the overtime and the full-time. And you figure it out. So basically that overtime line is negative and it's offset by the full-time at the end of the year. We're going to be probably $1 million from the payroll account offsetting the overtime. Okay.
I can tell you, since I've taken over as the liaison of the police department, it's amazing how Karen keeps that budget on track right to the end of the year. There's not a lot of leeway in that budget, and she manages it pretty well. So thank you. And Trish, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, kind of. And I do want to add to the compliment to Karen and both chiefs since I've been here. You do make the budgets work, and I truly appreciate whatever you're given. So the overtime as of right now, you're saying is about 2.3 million. I just want to make sure I have that correct.
Correct.
Okay, and we budgeted for 1.2, which is what you're asking for this year. So thank you. That was my only question. I appreciate it. And you guys you do phenomenal with the money that you get, and I appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
And Chief, you may also want to cover that you've stopped all training to fill the position, so you're not burning overtime at the moment. But the training is going to have to be made up at some point, and that will be a hit as well.
So yes, we've suspended all of our training, and again, like I spoke earlier, a lot of that training is mandatory. It's mandatory certifications. It's a lot of it is department-wide mandatory trainings, whether it be first aid, SRT, units, stuff like that. That's mandated through the federal government or the state. So all of that has been suspended, and that will have to come back next year. And again, when that training happens, that training has backfill overtime cost to it. I have a plan. I'm working on a plan where we will be able to manage this difference without costing the city anything. I'm not ready to present it right now, but we will be. What I would like to do is to be able to get all those training costs, all the required trainings in and submitted and completed, and not cost the city anything. So that's my goal. I have a plan that I will present to the mayor first and let folks know.
All right. Alderman Schmidt, and then Alderman O'Brien, then Alderman Jetting.
Thank you. Hi, Chief. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you? Thank you
I'm
for
good.
jumping on.
how are you doing with your protective gear? How do you police with, and what do you have? Do you have enough of what you need?
So thank you very much for the question. At the beginning of this thing, we were very, very low. I would like to stress, and I've been telling everybody I can, the relationship that we have with the fire department and AMR in the hospitals has been truly amazing. We tried to manage. There were certain situations where we didn't need the PPE as much as the hospitals, so we gave them some. And the fire department has absorbed some of our medical calls, and the way we handle it, we work together a little bit differently. So they have certain equipment, and then they've prepared some for us if we need to go in. Right now, we're doing very well. We check in every single day with how much PPE. We know the city has it organized where we all know how much PPE we have, how much we used, how much we expend, and all of that is tracked daily. And again, we've been working well, just in case everybody's been working so well to get it from different sources. It's truly a team effort in the city. I don't think the citizens will ever know how well all the city employees have worked together through this, and that's inclusive of the mayor, the alderman. Everybody has just kind of flowed well. So I appreciate it. We're good on PPE right now. We monitor it every day, and we'll continue to do so.
Follow up, Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you. Because this is all reactive at this point, what you're doing, I'm a little worried about the stress on the police that are actually being reactive instead. I'm also concerned about suicides. I understand the number is up in the general population, and that also has to be very hard on you. How are your officers standing up?
Well, as you all know, that the suicide issue within the department is fairly close to home for myself, Jim, and Kevin. We're doing well. We're doing as well as you can do. I think we've taken great care for our employees to make sure that we minimize their stress at home. We've allowed them to be reactive. We've allowed them to not handle certain calls, or if calls are allowed to be handled over the phone, we do. If somebody is very high risk, for example, we have an employee whose wife has MS and has several other medical issues. He's in our contingency force right now. Stay home, take care of your family, do what you have to do. Don't bring anything back to your family. Little things like that, I think, make a huge difference for our employees to know that we care. We're going to do the best we can to take care of you. At the end of the day, we're police officers, and some days it's not a good day to be a police officer. We're here to serve. We're here to protect people, and that's part of our job. So we minimize the stress. We have resources available. When this is done, we will kind of work with maybe some group debriefs, some one-on-one peer support. We do check in on each other, but it's a great comment, and we as an agency are definitely cognizant of the mental health.
Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Really do. Thank you.
Thank you.
All set, Alderman Smith. All right, Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, I think you're aware, because I hope somebody did contact you, but it seems like our friends up in Concord have written a bill, and it did pass the House. It's now trying to go through the wall to the Senate, but like everything else up there, they're on the slowdown with the COVID-19, so I don't know when it's going to be heard. But basically what the gist of the bill is, taking some of the drug forfeiture money and applying that, which was probably entitled to your department, and I would imagine like similar situations in Manchester, and I taking that money and applying it to other communities throughout the state. I did not vote for it because I would like, I don't know, I believe that whatever you guys, a larger department such as you in Manchester, perhaps even Salem, and working hard in that drug forfeiture money, that money should have stayed at home into our coffers. You guys were doing the yeoman work. But if that bill does go through this year, would it affect your budget and have a negative impact on you? And I will try to testify when it does go to the Senate to stop it. I know the other 27 delegates from the city, greatly do not support it, but we'll try to put the brakes on it. But can you just explain to the public how it could have a negative impact on you?
Sure. Losing that forfeiture money would have a huge impact on the budget, and I'll explain why. It costs us roughly $100,000 a year to run our drug unit. We do not have that in our budget at all. That entire drug unit is managed through forfeiture funds. So it doesn't cost the taxpayer of Nashua a dime. Now, historically, we've gone out, we've investigated drug dealers, we've bought drugs from them, we've arrested them, we've done search warrants, and we put them in jail. As you all know, the last 5-6 years, the drug world has dramatically changed with the opioid crisis. Because of that, we've also been forced to change. Now our role is not only is it enforcement of the dealers that are supplying the opioids to the people and killing them, but also our objective is to get those that are using, get them a mechanism to get help. And most often that time is arresting them. We have several different investigative techniques to kind of find them, see what they're doing, get them under arrest. We're not looking to put those people in prison. We're looking to get them help. We're very active in drug court. We're very active with the mental health facilities to get people the help that they need to get off the substance abuse. But if you take away that funding, two things will happen. Number one, I'll either be asking you for about $100,000 to run a drug unit, and number two, I'll be asking you for more money for some of the equipment. As you know, Nashua Police Department is probably one of the best equipped departments in the state, if not New England. We're one of 2 bomb units in the entire state, one of 2 dive recovery teams in the state. We have the best SWAT team in the state. They're all the best trained, the best equipped. Most of that money comes from grants and it comes from asset forfeiture. So those items that we have, those tools that we use to keep Nashua safe or to keep Nashua engaged, they come from drug forfeiture. It doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. So if we start to lose that money, we will lose our ability to enforce drug actions in the city. We'll lose the ability to get the majority of the users and those with substance misuse into good programs because we won't be investigating them. And then they'll realize, well, I have no reason to talk to the police, so I'm just going to keep using and I'm not going to go to jail. So it would have a severe impact on the city of Nashua. We have guidelines federally that we are audited on a yearly basis, and we never get it. We can't just spend it on anything. We're very limited to the items we can spend it on. So it would have a severe impact.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief.
Okay, and Alderman Jettie?
Yes, thank you. So I have a few questions. Number one, the total at the end of the budget, the total police budget, there's a difference of approximately 200,000, which you've talked about. But when I go through the each separate item for the department requests compared to the mayor proposed, I don't find the 207,000. Can you point out where that is?
Yeah, so the 207,000, and Karen, again, please jump in if I'm misspeaking here. The mayor had cut us, came in at 2.25, and just bottom line cut us after that. What we're saying we need is the 2.25 plus the 207,000. That's where that difference is.
Aaron, did you want to add anything?
Yeah. So my question is, I don't see any difference between your department request and what the mayor has proposed, except for the bottom line.
Alderman Jettie, he did not go line by line. He just sliced at the bottom level. He just said anything above 2.25%, I'm cutting. So it's a bottom line cut. They did not cut line by line. He wasn't looking at any line particular. He was just looking at what their budget was relative to the guidelines that he provided of 2.25. And Karen, you want to emphasize that, or?
No, that's fine. That's what I was going to say.
Okay, Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, so my question is, where in the department's request is the 207,000? Or did you just conform the request to what the mayor limited you to?
I'm not sure what you're asking, but I could tell you that our increase was 140,000. Is that what you wanted to know? Where we wanted to increase? 140,000.
Yeah, I'm looking at the budget book,
Mhm.
and there's a column that's labeled 2021 department request. I'm assuming that's what the police department is requesting. And the next column is 2021 mayor proposed. And when I go through each item, they're all the same, except for the very end, the total department request is 207,000 more than what the mayor proposed. I'm trying to find out where that is.
You would find the same things in the fire department and the school department. It's a bottom line cut. He didn't go line by line by line, and he didn't ask the police department to go back and modify their lines to justify the end number. It's the budgets that he just said, okay, that's your budget, but I'm cutting your request by 200K.
And I think part of that, and Karen, jump in here, $140,000 of that is the reductions through attrition that we've been traditionally cut. So we have to manage our budget through attrition. And that's why we're asking that to be back in, because we're going to be full staff. We won't have that money to manage through attrition. Is that accurate, Karen?
Yes, sorry, I'm having trouble with this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. So correct. The 51,800 account, reductions in attrition, 140,000. We put back in. The majority is going to be payroll. Basically, it's contract items. And then the balance would be the fact that whatever original mayoral reductions that were already taken out would be the balance to come up to the 207,062. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
All set. Alderman Jettie, did you have another question?
Yes, I do. Regarding the overtime, what is the difference between line 1300 labeled overtime and 1330 overtime dash coverage?
Overtime coverage is in itself coverage. So when they're covering for people, and then overtime is going to be a miscellaneous type account that is going to cover any meetings or, go ahead, Chief.
Possible crime investigations, any of the conference meetings that we have to attend with the state AG's office, or any number of panels that we sit on as part of our jobs.
Okay, and could I follow up?
Follow up, go ahead.
And so the line item 1322 for overtime investigative, you know, that what I learned when I was liaison to the police department is that investigative, that occurs when there's a major crime and the police officers have to continue, have to stay on the job to continue the investigation and follow it to its end. Like when there's a murder, for example. So you have really no control over that, do you?
No, we do not.
And the
1322 investigative, those are not even the major crimes like the homicides. Those come out of that expendable trust that was created a couple years ago. These are your basic robberies or felonious sexual assault stuff that it's $2,000 here, $3,000 here that are time sensitive, and you can't just stop and walk away.
Okay. And
if I could add, you're back to the original 51,300, the one I talked about as being a miscellaneous. That's also where your parades are. Your parades are in there too.
Okay. So you said that that your current overtime that you've spent, am I correct? You said you've spent like 2.3 or 2.1 million already in overtime this year?
Yes, by year end, I'm approximating 2.3, and the overtime will be offset from the vacancies in the full-time account. So the payroll account will go in the negative. And the
Okay.
2-digit will cover it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All set, Alderman Jettie?
Yes, thank you.
I have Linda and then Alderman Wilshire. Alderman Goff?
Yes, I just want to speak to the bill that's in the House that left the House and is in the Senate. And I think, Chief, we had talked about it before. The bill had to move forward to the Senate. However, the Senate is looking at the bill and trying to find other financing so that it's not coming out of that money. So, you know, in talking to the different senators that I spoke to, everyone is looking to make changes there. So I just want you to know that it's not ended at this point. This is really just the beginning.
Okay.
And that's, you know, Alderwoman Gathright, we've worked together on this bill and several other bills. So definitely appreciate you walking us through and at least being a voice for us up there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all set, Alderman Gothright? All right. Alderman Wilshire?
Thank you. And thank you, Chief, for being here this evening. I just want to remind Alderman Jettie that crime is kind of like snow. You can't predict it. You can't budget for it. It happens when it happens, and you have to be ready. That's my philosophy on crime and how we get through that, paying for it. I wanted to ask Chief if you have anything in your overtime trust fund.
I believe we have, Karen, you know the number. We talked about it earlier.
Yes, around 33,000.
Yep. So, yeah, we're down to 33,000 in that. And again, some years, like you said, some years we get a lot of snow, some years we don't. When that initial fund was created, we didn't have to touch it that first year. The second year we had to touch it hard. We had a couple of major homicides, as we did a whodunit last year or the year before. So it's down to 33 now, but that doesn't get touched unless we need it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we have one transfer that we haven't done yet. We're watching the account. So it could be down a little bit lower. We might have 18,000 we might have to hit on that account.
Okay, thank you.
And that account has been much higher in the past, and we haven't put any money in that account for a while. And Chief, you and I have talked, if you have any kind of a major crime, and you could explain what a major crime is, that you may have to come back to us and have us put some money in that account. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. We've been fortunate. It has been funded a couple of times to effectively starting the year at about 100,000 is a comfortable safety net for us. If we don't use it, that's great. Unfortunately, if we do, $100,000 in a major investigation, such as a homicide with no suspects, those add up quickly. You spend a lot of leg room, a lot of leg time, or a missing person. We had a couple significant missing person cases this year, and they just eat up a lot of man hours.
Thank you. All set, Alderman Wilshire? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, Alderman Dowd.
Yes, Alderman Clemons.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to before. I mean, I don't want to wrap things up early, but I just wanted to. I guess my last comment is just say that I really appreciate everybody here this evening coming and speaking. And I know I asked some tough questions there at the beginning because obviously it's going to be a tough situation this budget season. I completely understand where everyone's coming from, especially after listening to where the overtime is and things like that. I can understand that where you would be apprehensive to cut anything from the, especially from the mayor's proposed budget, where it's already cut by some $200,000. But I appreciate the fact that you entertained my questions, that you really, and I can tell that, Chief, you put some thought into it, and your budget is so, it's just so tight as it is. And I completely get that. Because as we've been talking here, I've been looking through it. I've looked through it before, but it's amazing to me that the amount of money that, like you say, you work on through attrition. It's incredible to me that how much money gets transferred in and out of just vacant police officers. So with that being said, yeah, I can definitely support the mayor proposed budget. I don't know that I would this year support putting anything else in there. Maybe the $24.95 for Mr. Mansfield, but I just wanted to tell you all that I really appreciate everything that you do. You have a department that is superb, and we have the best police department in the state of New Hampshire, and maybe even New England. And you should all be proud of that, especially considering the fact that the budget is so tight. So thank you all for all that you do, and be safe and healthy out there.
Thank you, Alderman Clemons. I appreciate that.
All said, Alderman Clements? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Before we wrap up, I would like Commissioner Tollner to tell us about the accreditation results for the police department this year, and at the meeting the other night of the commissioners, you got an outstanding rating from the accreditation, and also some other findings from the accreditation that go to speak to just how great a police force we have.
Yeah, I won't steal the chief's thunder, but yeah, Kalea gave us another outstanding grade. I think that one of the best compliments we got was when we went to the final review, and I want to compliment the chiefs for bringing everybody in that was working at the police department that day. The reviewers were up front. They were very complimentary of all aspects of what they looked at and they reviewed. The thing that I was struck with was they actually came up with, they said that we were doing 2 or 3 things in the police department. And one of the big things was our work, the chief's work with the community at large. And both those individuals were going back to their respective cities. And we're going to try and implement the programs that we've implemented here in Nashua. So we don't get a lot of press on it, but the people that worked on that particular project and the work that the police department does every day is reflective of the grade that we got from Clea. If you want to add anything.
No, I just want to stress that, like I said earlier, community relationships are a big part of my philosophy in running the National Police Department. And Linda, to your credit, one of those programs was our community conversations. They brought that back to the communities in New Jersey, where they were having trouble with relationships between law enforcement and the minority communities. So we couldn't be as good of a police department if we don't get the feedback and the relationships from everybody in the community that we do. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So I appreciate all that everyone does. And the people within the department are just unbelievably professional. They do a hard job. And no, I appreciate the support that I get from all of you.
Thank you.
Yep. Earlier today, I was going out to get my daily drive-through coffee, and there was a young female police officer, Nashua police officer, directing traffic while they were cutting trees down on Tinker Road. I stopped and thanked her for all that she does for the city of Nashua. And anybody that knows Tinker Road, that's like directing traffic in the middle of the Indy 500. So I'm sure that she was kept busy all day. So, but I think we all ought to, when we see a police officer, just tell them how much we think about them and how much we appreciate that they're keeping us all safe, especially during this pandemic. So,
Rick, just before we go, I just wanted to make sure if Commissioner Dahl had anything that he wanted to add to this conversation. He's been on the call. Or maybe he's having trouble with the mute. Okay. All right.
all right.
Yep.
So I think that unless anybody else has anything, that's going to wrap up our review of the police department at this time. We have some possible thoughts as we go into our deliberations on all the various departments, and we'll be addressing that at a later time. Right now, I think that the one thing we need to do, and my personal feeling is that we need to restore that 20, whatever it is, thousand to Bill Mansfield's area, so that the their offices are real close. So, so that he can have time spending particularly on that subject, and we can establish the budget for community communications to the right levels. And because otherwise we'll have to put it back in the police budget, because this person is, as I'm sure the chief will tell you, is very critical to the department, and to cut him 20%, wouldn't be his fault. Got caught up in the numbers. So I think it ought to go over to Mansfield's group, but if it doesn't, it's going to have to go back to the police department, and that's not in that 200K.
Right.
Right.
Any other questions for the police department? Seeing none, thank you very much, Chief, Deputies, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, be
See
safe.
you later, Karen. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, I think that's Alderman Clemons.
it is. Would you recommend that we do that tonight for the 20,495, or should we wait till the end after we've reviewed everything?
Let's wait to the end, and when we're making deliberations, so it's easier to track, and we keep track of the numbers. Otherwise, we'll be going back in paperwork, which is we never found to be very helpful. So we'll do that when we get to the deliberations, and the deliberations will be after whatever kind of a public hearing we can have with COVID-19. Okay?
Because that is something that I would support adding to the budget this year. So
Yeah,
just want that on record.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll address that when we get to our deliberations. Okay, so thank you again for everyone from the police department. And Alderman O'Brien, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make the motion to table R20-023 by roll call.
All right, the motion on the floor is to table R20-023 until our next budget meeting. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Clemons.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, that's 7 yeas, 0 nays.
All right, R2023 is back on the table. General discussion? Alderman Wilshire.
Thank you. What are we thinking about a public hearing? I mean, are we still going to try to have one at North once this stay-at-home order is lifted?
Right now, I've been working with, the way that the planning and zoning are conducting their public hearings. They are having meetings of the planning board and the zoning board with people presenting from the outside. We have the same kind of thing that we can do. I've asked IT and legal to put together a plan that we can adopt and use for. I don't think we're going to be able to have a meeting with that many people, because I don't think by that time, that we'll want to have a large group of people in one of our schools when our schools are closed. And, usually if we had 50 to 100 people there and they're all city employees. Excuse me? Okay. So We'll see how that turns out. It's a little ways to go here, but it may just be a meeting like this with the ability of the public to actually ask questions online.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right.
Appreciate that.
Any other general discussions? Marks by Alderman? No? All right, we don't need a non-public. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to adjourn by roll call.
Motion is to adjourn by roll call. Would you please call the roll?
Alderman Clemons.
Dropped off.
Yes.
Oh, there
Yes.
it is.
No one here.
Patience is a virtue, absolutely. Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
They were adjourned at 8:21 PM.